actually recently had a crazy ass dream of like we were all sitting in an apartment, and out of nowhere, like I had a friend just randomly walk out of like the room onto the balcony and just jump off.
Wow.
And it was a really crazy dream. I had it like 2 weeks ago, and so hearing your story and the detail of the song was really interesting. And I'm really interested in like what emotionally what it was like at that point in your life and why the song.
Right.
And I loved, man, there was a song that you also mentioned about slitting your wrist, but you got a Tom Ford suit on.
Yeah.
And that shit was really captivating to me. So tell me about your emotional journey from that moment on, a little bit.
Man, before I jumped was probably the darkest moment in my life. Which is crazy in hindsight, you know, they say like the darkest moment comes like right before the light. I was just living in LA, 1-bedroom apartment. I had like 10 of my homeboys living with me. You know, my mom's birthday just passed. Another Thanksgiving I'm missing. And I'm just like, what am I doing this for? Like, what if I don't make it? Yeah. And at the time I found out I was having a child. And I just felt like, man, I'm gonna have to give up this thing that I knew to, you know, raise my family. And at that point, I'm like, if I gotta give up this only thing I've been pursuing, like, I'm gonna just off myself, because this is the only, you know, the end of the road is what I've been pursuing. So if I gotta abort the mission, it's like, I don't even need to be here. Like, you know what I mean, send me to the next life. So before I jump, from like a journalist perspective, it's my very honest album. You know, there was things I did as a child that I wasn't proud of, that I confessed to my parents. Cheating on my pregnant girlfriend at the time. Yeah. She's thinking they're just songs, but it's really just me like getting it off my chest. And I was unaware, but every time, like, as I put pen to the paper, I'm feeling like light as a feather as I'm getting this guilt off. Yeah. And it, for a large portion of the album, I was like, I'm gonna make this album. I'm gonna actually unalive myself. And hopefully the album blows up and the royalties go to my daughter. You know, that was it for a lot of the album. As I got closer to her birth, I started having other conversations with myself, like, this is bringing a blank slate. This child is gonna see me as her superhero. She's gonna see me as whoever I wanna be. Right. And she has nothing to hold against me. She can't hold what my mistakes against me because she didn't know it. Right. You know, so I started becoming more optimistic, and slowly just started, instead of actually like unaliving my actual self, it was unaliving the parts of myself that I needed to let go of.
I absolutely love how you mentioned feeling light as a feather as you're writing these. I had a conversation recently with a friend about how music really causes catharsis, and it really causes us to really reset our nervous system and really be able to relax. Right. And so you also mentioned the guilt of things that you did as a child. And so I'm curious, as a kid, what was the earliest experience you have of writing? Was it narrative? Was it really records? Was it?
My earliest experience I've had with writing was in kindergarten. You know, like in kindergarten, they're introducing you, this is math, right? This is reading, yeah. This is poetry. Yeah. When we got to poetry, my ears just was like, whoa, what's this? You know, you can express yourself, but then make it rhyme, which kind of like creatively challenges you. Just since a kid, I love that. So it definitely started with poetry. I was a really like timid and quiet kid. So writing, I was just always a really good writer. I remember I went to juvie, and we had to like write like a Halloween story to get like a Snickers. But like, you know, once you're in juvie so long, like you really want that Snickers, and I won that. In school, I wasn't really good at math. I wasn't really good in reading, but writing was just always there. It was just me and me, like, you know, like just internal dialogue with myself.
I see that you mentioned the timidness. Where do you think that stems from? Do you think it stems from, personally, my timidness always came from being afraid of saying the wrong thing. And it was because of the fact that my mother was always trying to control what I said as a kid. I was like, don't say that, don't say this, don't do that, don't do this. And so I'm curious where your timidness might stem from in regards to
Yeah,
that.
I actually love what you said because I think it's a combination of many things.
Right.
My mother attempted to control me a lot. My father, now I was terrified of my father growing up.
Likewise.
My father was big, muscle, like a bodybuilder. He was a bodyguard. Um, and growing up, he had anger issues. So it's like, depending on how he was feeling that day, you couldn't talk back. So growing up, you couldn't really, in my house, you couldn't really like, and me and my dad cool now.
That's
like,
great.
I love him
That's
to
great
death,
to
but I'm
hear.
just, there was, you couldn't talk too loud. You couldn't laugh too loud. You couldn't correct them. You couldn't, you know what I mean? So
Walking on eggshells.
I think a little bit of that silenced like my voice,
Right.
and like where it became more like writing. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Sure.
I love that. Yeah, I had a similar experience where like you always have to like walk on eggshells. And
Yeah.
later on in life, like we realized like unfortunately a lot of that stemmed from his problem with alcohol.
Yeah. Wow.
And the problem that we had in the family with alcohol. And eventually, thankfully, we were able to hit a wall to where we were able to progress.
Mm-hmm.
And so I really do relate to like the stories of just like there's real fear in just not knowing the unpredictability, and that causes us to later want to control everything too. Like not just our family dynamics, but it also like leads us to control our relationships, leads us to control our professional lives, leads us to control everything.
Right.
So I love that.
Right.
Where'd you grow up? What was the environment like? What did it sound like? What did it taste like?
Yeah. I grew up, I was born in Miami, North Bay Village. I moved to Pembroke Pines when I was maybe like 5 years old.
Okay.
Then I moved to Egypt. I lived in Egypt till I was about 7. Moved back to Miramar. Till I was like 10, 11. Then I moved to a place called Cape Coral, Florida.
Okay.
Growing up, I mean, my father provided. You know what I mean? Like we had a roof over our heads. There was always food in our fridge.
It's amazing.
There was a lot of, because of like how my parents grew up. See, my mom, she lost both her parents by the time she was 12. Right? So she went around from relative to relative.
Yeah.
So all my mother ever known was fear. My father was a bodyguard for members of the royal family. There was things he had to do what he had to do to provide for us. I think a lot of the things he had to do kept him up at night. Mm-hmm. So now we're in this, I grew up in a household where there's like, it's like love from unhealed people, but then there's like anger and fear.
Right.
Oh
my goodness.
And bro, fear has literally been my enemy my entire life just because what it did to like the people I love. Like just constantly growing up. To this day, my mother, like, if I don't pick up on a couple rings, she thinks the worst happened. And I've offered her therapy. I've offered her many things, especially coming from our background where we don't think therapy is important. She don't realize, like, yo, you have trauma. There's no way that a 12-year-old can process losing her parents.
Nope.
There's
no way.
Process.
They don't have
Adults
the pathways
sometimes
to do
can't process it.
Yes.
So going on to that, she did the best she could. She loved us the best she could. Yeah.
What's your emotional journey been like? Because I see that you bring up therapy. I'm a huge proponent of therapy and really like clearing out your nervous system from all of the trauma that you built up inside. Mm-hmm. Especially at an age like 10 or 12 where you literally can't control and it's not your responsibility to control things like that.
Right.
So what's your journey been like? What's been the hardest thing about therapy?
The hardest thing about therapy? Good question.
Or not even therapy, just facing your trauma.
I think it's really uncovering it, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like one of the breakthrough sessions I had with my therapist, I didn't have a good relationship with my father. So I looked up to older street guys that, were either involved in my music career, and their pursuit of money and their pursuit of women. Right. And these are the guys, like managers, investors that I had, were street dudes and they had a bunch of women. And I thought this is success. This is what it means to be a man. Because my father as well, was doing his thing. And there's not enough men in our families like checking us like, nah, that's not what a man is.
Really?
So in therapy, we're going through and we come to find out I was looking up to broken men who just wanted love, but they thought they needed money to get love, right? And it was just like, wow, you know, it really made me like, it just shook my whole world. Like, I've been following the blind, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's incredible. What emotion do you run from the most?
That's a good question. What emotion? What emotion do I run from the most? I think I struggle with compassion.
Tell me more. That's so interesting.
Because I grew up on tough love, sometimes like I think that's, you know, everybody's built for it, but everybody's not built for it. Yeah. You know what I mean? So sometimes it's just like, man, what you mean? Like, get up.
Toughen up a little
bit. Get up.
Like,
life knock you down, get up. Yeah. And everybody's not conditioned like that. Everybody doesn't, you know, so because I didn't receive that much love, it's really hard for me to understand when somebody needs love. So that's something I'm definitely working on.
Beautiful. Let's say you're 12, 13 years old. You're having a really bad day. The music isn't there. How do you cope?
12, no music?
There's no music around.
At 12, 13 years old?
Yeah, let's say 12, 13.
Mischief, man. I just get into mischief.
Is there any specific anecdote that comes to mind or story? Not at that specific age, but just a time and place where like music wasn't present and you were just like, you didn't have that as a way to like get away from the bullshit or.
Nah, it was just always music. Like I didn't watch Spider-Man or Batman until I was like in my 20s. Like rappers, musicians were my superheroes. Like Eminem was my Spider-Man.
I'd love to hear that. Okay.
Yeah.
So who else would you consider that?
Jay-Z.
Yeah.
Was
it the way that they were able to tell their stories, like lyrically?
I related to Eminem really early. In this book, I didn't even understand what depression was. It's just, that's just how crazy like human connection is. I just related to his pain without even, I guess if that even makes sense, without even understanding pain.
No, absolutely.
You know, like I remember hearing Stan and he's like rapping about like wrist cutting and I'm just like, oh, you thought of that too. Oh, you felt like that too.
Yeah.
And as a kid, right, like my first suicide attempt came when I was in like, I think 5th grade.
Yeah.
It was over something dumb. My girlfriend like hugged somebody on the basketball court. And I told my boy, man, I'm gonna just unalive myself. But it wasn't like, I'm gonna unalive myself and end it. I don't know, I just always felt like there was more. Like, I don't like this life, I'm gonna go to another one.
Right.
Yeah, I just always had that.
Being at the brink of something like that or thinking about it so often, do you think that ultimately it stems from just wanting the feeling of feeling important? Do you think that people that are on the verge of like committing such a crazy act, or do you think they just genuinely wanted to feel important, whether that importance is love or whether that importance is a role at their job or in society? Do you think it's just a lack of feeling important?
Yeah, I never thought about it like that, but now that you say that, definitely at least feeling important to somebody, feeling important to yourself. Yeah.
What's your creative process like? Curious.
My creative process, I walk in like a gazillion circles. Like I love walking and writing. Like I walk like 6 miles.
And write?
And just write.
Wow.
Yeah, like my running and walking, I do like 6 miles a day. That I need that. If I don't get that, like I'm not in the best mood. Yeah.
You did that today?
Nah. Just because last night was a long night.
Yeah, we have our days.
Yeah.
I figured
now weekends I tend to.
Yeah, you gotta chill out a little bit and go work.
Yeah.
No, I get it. Listen, man, I don't want to take up much of your time.
Nah, we here, man. I love this. It's actually
we've had
the dopest interview I ever did. conversation.
I got a couple more things in mind, and then we'll wrap it up. I'm curious where you at. Me personally, I use myself as an anecdote almost all the time, but me personally, I grew up very religious. And within that religious lifestyle, you see a lot of like things that make you question, like, does this really work, or is there really a God? Where are you at religiously, considering a lot of your change has stemmed from yourself rather than, let's say, elsewhere?
Man, I spent quite some time learning about different religions. Like, I grew up in front of a Christian church. I was baptized Catholic. I grew up in front of a Christian church. And I grew up going to church, but I just remember asking certain questions, and, the pastor's like, yo, as a kid, like, don't ask that. You can't ask that. And I was just like, oh, nah. Like,
every time.
So then I'm like, okay, maybe I'm just not Christian. So I tried Islam. After a while, it's just, I got into spirituality, went back to Islam. I studied a little bit of like Judaism and Kabbalah, and I think all religions have truths. At the end of the day, the principles are there. There's a higher power, and I just think religion, it's for you to explore, for you to get to know yourself, whichever journey you want to take to get to know God. But ultimately, there's the Most High, and I'm not sure we'll ever get all the answers. And I just think it's simple, man. Just be a person of morale. I think that was the greatest religion. Once I stopped lying, once I stopped cheating, once I stopped doing stuff I wasn't supposed to do, like, my life changed. So I don't know what religion that is. What
was the last time you felt your nervous system was completely haywire?
Haywire?
Haywire, like, holy shit, like, I'm either scared or I'm mad or I'm... When was the last time you felt like, I need to take a step back and, like, regulate myself?
Like January last year, I had already came off 2023 was probably like one of the toughest years of my life. At this point now I'm having a son. And I lost my last in the stock market. After like going through some unimaginable stuff in 2023. And I think I had like $20,000 left, and I started a trucking company. And then that went to the ground. And I asked my therapist, I'm like, yo, why I keep taking these L's? And what he said changed my life. Because at that point I remember driving to the end of Key Biscayne, and I'm like, man, I don't know if I'm gonna make it. It's like, it's almost like getting back on your feet after being down so long. It's almost like, I don't know, you're 500 pounds, you get back in shape, and then you gain it again. You're like, fuck, man, that was not easy. I don't know if I have the energy to do it again.
Right.
But my therapist was like, I'm gonna tell you why you keep taking these L's, because you keep trying to create a plan B. And that just hit me. He's like, you've been studying doing music business for the last 15 years. And you're trying to create a plan B in stocks. Trucking. You haven't put in the time to master these things. You've mastered music. And then from that day forward, bro, I just said, yo, I'm not doing nothing else. I looked at my girl, I said, yo, you gotta hold it down for a little bit. I gotta learn, I gotta study, I gotta become my highest self. I'm going all in on the music. And fast forward, I think Leon Thomas Mutt just peaked at number 90 on the Billboard Hot 100.
Congratulations.
Like, life completely changed. And it's like magic, bro. It's like literally like we have all these distractions, and once you like block everything out, and it's just you and your goal, it's like only thing that's gonna happen is you're gonna make it.
Right.
You know what I mean?
I love that. One last question, and it kind of wraps up, because I really love how many stories you have and how many things you've been able to get through in the middle of adversity. And so I like to ask this question to people that really have gone through a lot. And it's a statement that I heard like 2 years ago, and it's, things don't happen to you, things happen.
For you.
No,
Oh,
things
no.
happen.
Oh,
So it's like,
oh.
I could be like, I wake up and like, my phone isn't charged and like,
Yeah.
I get stuck in traffic and it's like, all this shit is happening. Like, I'm having a bad day.
Yeah.
Like, this shit is happening to me.
Yeah.
But then I was like, things just happen. And we tend to like create the narrative that it's happening to us. What do you think about that?
Man, call me delusional, man, but I just tapped into like this mental algorithm where I'm just like, everything that happens to me is happening for my better good. I don't care how bad it is in the moment. Just because I look back at stuff I was really upset about losing 10 years ago, that I had to lose just
to
get here. I think of like really minute conversations of people I met 6 years ago that I'm like, man, why did that even happen? That now I can draw a line and it was no accident. Like they were played, that small role was crucial. And that's for everybody. If you sit and you start drawing the line between even how you and I got here, and you know what I mean, like you'll see that everything is divine order.
Well, Bizzy, thank you so much for your time, bro.
My God,
it's been a pleasure to conversate with you.
Yes, sir.
We've never met each other. This is literally our first
literally
one-on-one
the first
conversation.
time. Yeah.
And bro,
I love what you do, man.
Thank you,
I
bro.
love this.